Many of you will be very familiar with EasyMorph Desktop and EasyMorph Server as well. And I'm sure many of you will already have your EasyMorph Desktop linked to EasyMorph Server, but you might not understand some of the benefits and features that are available when you do connect EasyMorph Desktop to EasyMorph Server, what will be called EasyMorph Hub very soon. So we'll look at a few things. For those who don't know, haven't got EasyMorph Server today, or don't know how to connect desktop to server, we'll very quickly look at how you can do that. And then we'll move on to look at some of the benefits and the ways that this really helps you to gain access to new features, but also collaborate and work with other people in your organization. And that's collaboration on workflows, building those, or projects as we call them, how you can have shared connector repositories and utilize those, how data sets can be stored on the EasyMorph server and accessed and reused, and some of the more advanced features like raising issues on boards, and even briefly mention one of the new features coming in the next release. So let's dive in and look at EasyMorph Desktop, and first of all look at how you can connect EasyMorph Desktop. So hopefully everybody here has got EasyMorph Desktop and has already explored it and has a basic understanding of it. And every time you open it, you will be presented with this welcome or start screen. Very easy to miss. I did the first time I started to use EasyMorph. In the top right hand corner, we have the options for connecting to an EasyMorph server. I already have a connection in place to an EasyMorph server, and as part of that, I have access to multiple spaces on that EasyMorph server. If you don't know what spaces are on server, check out our previous videos. We've gone into a lot of detail on those sort of features and what they give you. So I can easily, having already got a connection, move and connect to those different spaces in EasyMorph server. But if I haven't already got a connection, I can create a new connection. I have EasyMorph server running locally on my same machine, so I can access it using an address of localhost, but you will need the address of your EasyMorph server. You can give it a name. This will just be what it's called in your EasyMorph Desktop for you to go to. You need to also define the port. Now, if it hasn't been changed, EasyMorph by default works on port 6330. Mine is actually on 1 because for some reason I've changed it. And then I need to connect to that server, and it will ask me to authenticate so it knows who I am and what spaces I have access to. And I can give it my username and password for my EasyMorph server space, and I am connected. I then have access to all of the spaces on that, and I can choose which ones I want to add onto my desktop to be able to use and make available to me. And I've then saved that, and I can, just as I did before, move and switch through the different spaces available on that server. Now, as you can see, it is possible to have more than one EasyMorph server connected at once. This can be really useful if you've got a kind of test or a development environment as well as a production environment. You need to be able to connect to both of those sort of environments. You can, and EasyMorph saves the connectors using the name we gave it, and we have those different ones available, so I can switch back to our other server and EasyMorph will connect to that. So I very quickly swap between those servers and make different connections to them and access the different spaces on those different servers. So now I'm connected to a server. What do I get that's new that I didn't have before? Quite a few things. First of all, let's start looking at how we can collaborate with others on workflows or projects, as we call them. So these projects can be stored in EasyMorph server in one of a couple of ways. And I can then open those projects from the server. At the top of the screen, I have, as well as open project, as an option for me to open a local EasyMorph project that I've created. I also have two options, open from server and open from catalog. If I have EasyMorph Explorer as an add-on to EasyMorph server, or if you've got one of the higher license levels, you will have Explorer available in one space. Then I can have EasyMorph Catalog as part of EasyMorph Explorer. So if I very quickly jump across to this EasyMorph server, I can actually look at the catalog and see all of the assets in that catalog. And many of those assets are EasyMorph workflows or projects behind the scenes. And I can actually access any of those catalog assets, which are a project behind the scenes. And if you want to know more about the catalog and different asset types, again, check out some of our previous videos. So any of those assets which I can access from EasyMorph Desktop by using the Open from Catalog option. I can find the asset that's relevant. As I said, it will only be those assets which are actual projects. Let's take Open Opportunities. I have a copy of it locally, but it will copy that asset down, ready for me to start to modify it. And this simply goes to share to Salesforce and downloads our latest opportunities and tweaks them slightly. So I can now edit this project. I can now modify it in whatever way I want to. And if I want, I can also save it back to the catalog. On the project toolbar, I have the publish to catalog option. I can either pick an existing asset. So if I want to overwrite that Open Opportunities that I've already created, I can do, or I have the option to create a new asset. If I've modified it significantly, I want to save a new version as some other name into the catalog, and I can simply overwrite it, set any other information about those assets. Again, check those previous videos for what's possible, and I can publish and overwrite that asset back to the catalog having modified it. Now, if I don't have EasyMorph Explorer available, I can still do something very similar. EasyMorph Server ultimately has available to us all of the files that are sitting in the background of our space. So we're on the demo space on this server, and there are lots of files in the background, and many of them are EasyMorph.morph files, which are projects, again, for me to access. And so even if I don't have Explorer with the catalog, with all of the nice naming and everything that comes with it, I can still open these projects from EasyMorph Desktop once I've got it connected using the Open From Server button. Again, I can see all of those projects. I can find the one which is the same, happens to be the same as the catalog asset we opened. We can open it, and we can again modify it. And to save it back, just as before, as well as the publish to catalog, we have the publish to server. This will send that more file back to the server. And again, I can overwrite an existing one, or I can give it a new name, create a new version. So in this way, it's very easy for us to store all of our projects on EasyMorph Server. Maybe they are scheduled, and that's why we're storing them there, but they could just be stored there to make sure that they're accessible to more than one person. One thing to note, if I download the project and modify it and I go to save it back, and in the meantime someone has changed that project in some way since I did it, whether it be a catalog asset or just saved as a file to the server, it will warn me that somebody else has modified it. So I will know that I'm about to overwrite something that somebody else has done. And obviously I can check in. Unfortunately, it doesn't tell me what they've changed. I've got to go and find that out for myself. But at least I know that they've changed it, and I won't publish it, and I won't overwrite what they've already done. So this makes it at least simple to collaborate with other people in the organization on EasyMorph workflows and projects. So the next feature available for really collaborating and working together between EasyMorph Desktop and EasyMorph Server is connectors and shared connector repositories. So again, if you're not familiar with what connectors are, in EasyMorph, we create connectors to provide the information so the EasyMorph knows how to talk to any other system or data source, whether it be a database or a business system or a cloud platform. We create a connector, and that connector can be of lots and lots and lots of different types available to us, and those connectors will hold the details of where to go to connect to that thing, what parameters should we be used, and importantly, what sort of login or authentication credentials we should use to connect to that source. Now, when I install EasyMorph Desktop, by default, it will create me a local connector repository, and that will be the one that it uses by default, and I can create connectors here and I can modify them, etc. But when I connect EasyMorph Server to EasyMorph Desktop, and more importantly to a specific space, That space, each space on an EasyMorph server has its own connector repository. And so I can also connect my EasyMorph desktop to the server, to a specific space, and I can choose to instead view the connectors in that space on that EasyMorph server. These will be the same set of connectors if someone else connects their EasyMorph desktop to the same server and has access to that same space. They will see the same list of connectors. As I said, it's very easy. You can switch between these two quite simply. And one thing to note is I can also kind of copy connectors between different repositories. So if I create a project locally, I have created a connector to connect to the relevant database or system locally, and I now want to publish it to the server. If I want to schedule or run that task of that project from the server, then it will also need to have access to that connector. And so I could pick any of my connectors that I've created locally. I can right click and copy, or there is a button on the toolbar. I can switch to my other repository on the server and I can paste it there. And now that's available with all of the details for everybody else to use who has access to that space. Or as I said, for when we want to run that locally, or on the EasyMorph server as well as locally. It's worth noting that if I switch to a different space on that server, then I will have a different set of connectors available because I'm now in that different space, and therefore the connector repository is different for me. So why would I want to do this? What's the sort of benefit, as well as just making it available for other people to be able to use in my organization? Well, there are some considerations, and one of the most important is sort of the security aspects of it and why we might want to be able to do this. So there's a few important things to know. The credentials, the usernames and passwords, or the access tokens, or whatever other authentication method that we use, is saved into that connector in the relevant repository that it sits in. If it's local, it will be stored in our local repository. If it's on the server, it will be stored in the server repository. Anybody who accesses the server repository from EasyMorph Desktop on their local machine is accessing it and on the server, and none of those credentials are copied down to the desktop. They are always held on EasyMorph server for security purposes. So this means that nobody needs to have the credentials themselves. I can configure that connector, add in the authentication, and then it resides on the EasyMorph server, and anybody who has access to that space on that EasyMorph server will be able to access that connector. And they can therefore use it to access the relevant system without having to know the authentication details themselves. So this lets me keep them more secure. It also means if I need to rotate those usernames and passwords for sort of IT policies, we have to rotate them every month or every couple of months, then I only have to go to the one connector, change the password there, and then it's updated and everybody will see it and use it without even knowing necessarily it's happened. It's worth also noting that, as you saw, we could copy connectors between repositories. We can actually prevent that from EasyMorph server. Dimitri will look a lot more in detail in a minute about some of the sort of more security aspects of EasyMorph server. And one of those is that we can prevent people from copying them from the server repository down to their local repository. So they would still be able to copy it back up if they want, if they're publishing a new a new project, but not copy ones down. So they won't be able to gain access to those credentials in their local repository. And one thing worth noting, I won't go into details and look at it, but we are going to be bringing a new feature in the not too distant future in version 6 that will allow per user connectors. Again, these will reside on the server repository, but they won't contain usernames and passwords or other authentication credentials. They'll allow people to configure them with their own. So a good example would be if I want to give a way for people to access EasyMorph, their email accounts from EasyMorph to get their emails into EasyMorph, then I could configure a connector or a per user connector with where the server details are, what the ports are, has to use, all of those more technical aspects, and then not include the usernames and passwords for any specific email account. And when the user tries to use it, they'll have to provide the email and password for their user account when they come to use it, to be specific to them, and so they can see there. So that is something coming in the future. So the next thing that we can really collaborate on once we interconnect EasyMorph Desktop and EasyMorph Server is sets of data. And again, we have a couple of different ways to do this. If I create a blank EasyMorph project, under the Add Data button, we have the option to retrieve a catalog asset. So again, those are those assets from EasyMorph Server in the Explorer catalog. And many of these assets will return a data set. Now, they could be computed assets, which calculate the data set on the fly and then return it, or they could be what we call pre-computed assets, which are pre-defined sets of data which are made available to EasyMorph. And doesn't matter, both are available for us to access. If you want to know more details, again, check out some of our previous sessions. But I can pick any of these data sets. So if I pick the open opportunities one again, I'm not asking to open the workflow or the project that underlies it. I want to access the data that it returns. And I can do that. EasyMorph will add that set of data and the relevant action to my workflow, and I can now access that data. The work is being done to run that workflow on EasyMorph Server, and the resulting data set is being presented to me. And I can, of course, do whatever I want to do, build a new workflow from this point, doing whatever I need to do, and I can sort of modify that data set. And again, as before, I can send that data set back to EasyMorph Server, a bit like I could with a project. There are a couple of ways to do it. I can pick any action. So if I, let's just do add an action just to get some other thing in there, another action in, I can right click on any action in my EasyMorph workflow, and there's a send/save output to. So if I click it, the data as it would be output by that action in the workflow at that point it is placed in the workflow. I can output it in many different ways. I can send it to files, etc., which can be really useful. But one of the options is to publish it back to EasyMorph Server. That allows me to send that back to my EasyMorph Server. I can pick a dataset file, it's an existing one to overwrite, or I can give it a new one, and I can actually send that dataset back to EasyMorph Server to hold it there, and it can be available to other people as well. Another way quickly that we can access the same functionality from analysis view, again, if I pick any specific set of data, and even if I choose to filter the data, so let's filter it to, okay, I'll find one that has, let's just pick some names. So even my filtered data within analysis view, if I click on the send/save to, if I have the option to pick all of the data, all the filtered rows, and I can publish that again back to EasyMorph Server to make that available as a data set for other people to use and for me to access again in the future. As well as pulling a catalog asset in, we can also just access dataset files on EasyMorph Server. So again, if you don't have EasyMorph Explorer available, you might want to be able to just use dataset files which are stored. We can do this with the import from a dataset. Now, of course, by default, it offers me to find a dataset which is available on my local machine, and I can open that. But the import dataset action also has, as well as the local files option, it has an EasyMorph Server option. Now, there are a couple of methods we can do it. If we have EasyMorph Server connected to our demo space, then we can choose that space. And again, just as we did before, we can choose a path that we want to save that file to. Also to import from. So I'll import the same dataset file. And we can apply that, and our data will come in from a dataset file from EasyMorph Server as we did before. And obviously we could send that back as we just looked at. There are a few other options and things which are easily overlooked, which sometimes people miss. One thing worth noting is it defaults to connectors. It is possible to create a connector to an EasyMorph server as a way, again, of allowing people to send information to other spaces, for example, on that server from the one they're connected to. So I can actually create a connector to an EasyMorph server space. The other option, which is often very easy to overlook, and this is a sort of piece of functionality which even really experienced EasyMorph developers often overlook, is this big edit dataset button. Now, this works for both local datasets, but it also works for EasyMorph server datasets. And if I click it, it opens me a Excel light, if you like, window, which allows me to sort of edit and modify that dataset file. I can edit existing values, so I can simply overwrite or type in a new value into any of the fields. I can also add in new columns, or I can add a new row and add new values in, or I can delete rows, etc. And when I click on publish and close, it will save that modified data set back to EasyMorph server. If it's selected as the import from source, it will save that back to that file on EasyMorph server. And so I can actually find that data set, realize there's a problem in that data set maybe, and change it, modify it, and publish it back so that anybody else who comes to it will see the corrected version, and it will be available for them to use and not have to fix the same errors as well. One of my favorite pieces of functionality that's really heavily overlooked. And the last bit of sort of functionality for connecting EasyMorph server, or one of the benefits of connecting EasyMorph server to EasyMorph Desktop, is when I do find those problems. So I could maybe edit this data set, but if that data set is being updated in the background by EasyMorph server's tasks, and so maybe a task runs every night and it overwrites that data set, just because I changed the value in the data set, it would be overwritten because it hasn't been changed in that source. And we need to do something more significant to correct the data in that source. One of the really nice, useful features which we added quite recently is, again, using that either save send to output option. I have an option to raise an issue. So for those that don't know, very quickly, and again, you'll find more information on this in our previous videos. On EasyMorph, if you have EasyMorph Explorer on the boards section, you can add an issues tracking section to an EasyMorph board. And we can not only raise issues here directly, we can also programmatically raise them from within our workflows, but we also have the option to raise an issue from EasyMorph Desktop once we have it connected to an EasyMorph server. I can pick that server board. I can set all the usual parameters and information for my issue I found. And most importantly, there's an option to attach the data set at that point in the workflow where I right-clicked on the action. I can raise the issue. That will be sent to EasyMorph server, that set of data. And when I switch back, I will have my new issue, which was just created. And if I open it, the data set file was attached to that issue for me. So again, if I find a problem in the data, I could raise an issue, allocate it to the right person who can go and fix it in the underlying system so it's resolved. And I can do it in one click or or a couple of clicks and just raise that directly. Worth pointing out again, the same functionality exists in Analysis View. So again, using the Save to Send To button as the raise issue, and it works exactly the same way. However, again, if I've got filters in place in the Analysis View, I can attach the filtered data set. So if I narrow it down to just the problem records, I can attach just those to the source, to the issue that's raised on the board. So that's a look at most of the sort of new existing features. There is one new feature coming, as I said, which is custom actions. This will be coming soon. In fact, the first version of version 6, when it's released, maybe next month, will have the start of this functionality, and that is custom actions. I won't go into details on what these are and what they will allow you to do. If you check out our previous community meetup session, we went into much more detail, but these will again be a really great reason to connect EasyMorph Desktop to EasyMorph Server to give you more functionality to collaborate across your organization for everybody who uses EasyMorph.
All right, it looks like Matt's done with his portion. Thank you so much for watching the video, and we'll see you on the next one.